The crystal chandeliers above shimmered like frozen rain, suspended over a room that smelled of arrogance and expensive perfume. Waiters in black and white glided between marble pillars, holding trays with champagne flutes that sparkled like stars. The Del Valle Grand Ballroom had been prepared for something important. Or rather, someone important. The voices buzzed. "He's doing it tonight," one woman whispered, her lips painted the same red as the carpet. "He invited her. Can you believe it?" But no one knew exactly why she had been invited. At the center of it all stood Leonardo Del Valle, the kind of man who wore cruelty like cologne. He adjusted the cuff of his suit and glanced at his gold watch, imported, custom-made, ticking like the heartbeat of the empire he ruled. His jaw tightened. He hated being kept waiting, especially by someone like her. Behind his cold smirk, however, was a mind calculating every second. Tonight would be a performance. Not a business one, but a show. A humiliation crafted with silk gloves. The crowd? His board, his investors, and every sycophant who adored his success. And the stage? This luxurious hall, his kingdom. Then the camera cuts, not literally but emotionally, back to 7 hours earlier. The shift begins with muted light filtering through gray-tinted windows. Mops slap against marble. Trash bags rustle like ghosts. In this world, she exists, not as a person, but a shadow. She pushes a cart filled with spray bottles and folded towels. Her name tag reads Sophia, barely legible under a layer of worn-out plastic. Her back is straight, but her head is down. Always. She doesn't look at anyone. She doesn't speak unless spoken to. Because in places like this, silence is survival. In the hallway of the 39th floor, just outside Leonardo's office, she scrubs a coffee stain from the carpet with mechanical patience. The door opens with a soft click. "You." His voice is sharp, smooth like a blade. She stands, not nervously, but with the kind of calm that comes from enduring too much. He looks at her like someone might look at a speck on their tailored shoes. "Be ready by 7. I want you at the event tonight." Her hands remain still on the mop. A flicker of confusion moves behind her eyes, but she doesn't question him. She nods once, silently. And just like that, the trap is set. What no one sees is what happens later, when the staff lockers are empty and the city outside is veiled in sunset. Sophia sits on the edge of a bench, holding a black velvet box with shaking hands. It has waited, untouched, for years. The note inside simply reads, "If the time ever comes, remember who you are." Her reflection in the cracked mirror shows someone she barely recognizes. Not the cleaner, not the servant, but the woman she had buried long ago. Outside, the limousine's engine hums impatiently. Inside the ballroom, Leonardo lifts his glass to the air and announces with a laugh, "And now, the special guest of the evening. Let's give her a warm welcome." The doors open. Gasps ripple like a wave. A woman walks in, hair swept in an elegant chignon, a gown that hugs every curve like liquid gold, heels tapping in slow command. Every eye in the room turns. Conversations die mid-sentence. The laughter dies too. Because this isn't just a woman. This is Sophia, and she doesn't look like she belongs. She looks like she owns the room. The silence is deafening. No one dares to speak. Not even the whispers that have been fluttering like moths moments before survive the weight of her presence. Sophia glides through the marble hall like smoke through glass. Untouchable, unreal. Every step echoes, commanding attention like a queen walking into a court that forgot her crown. Leonardo Del Valle freezes mid-sip, his champagne flute trembling just slightly. For the first time in years, he doesn't know what to say. The smirk that once dripped arrogance slowly slips from his lips as his eyes trace the impossible transformation. He had invited the cleaner, the invisible girl, but the woman standing before him now wasn't a mistake in the guest list. She was a revelation, a challenge, a threat cloaked in silk and confidence. Sophia meets his gaze with quiet fire. She doesn't smile. She doesn't flinch. She simply walks, head high, back straight, as if she had walked this path 1,000 times in another life. And maybe she had. A soft voice interrupts the spell. "Senorita, do you have an invitation?" The event coordinator asks, stepping between her and the crowd. Her tone wavers, not with suspicion, but fear. Because even she doesn't believe this woman doesn't belong. Sophia doesn't blink. She reaches slowly into her clutch and pulls out a small card, engraved with gold. The official invite from Leonardo himself. The woman reads it twice, swallows hard, and steps aside. She's allowed in. Sophia continues her path toward the center of the ballroom, toward the man who summoned her like a clown for his cruel amusement. But now, she is no clown. She is the storm they didn't predict. Flashbulbs go off. Cameras capture the moment. Journalists whispering frantically. Who is she? Is she royalty? No one knows her name. But look at the way he's staring at her, like he's seen a ghost. At the far end of the ballroom, seated at the most exclusive table, is a woman with diamond earrings and a face sharpened by years of plastic perfection. Her name is Veronica Del Valle, Leonardo's sister, and perhaps even colder than he is. She leans closer to her husband, a slimy hedge fund mogul with a pocket square louder than his conscience. She's dangerous, Veronica mutters, eyes never leaving Sophia. Why? Her husband scoffs. Because she looks better than you in that dress. Veronica's nails dig into his hand under the table. Because she walks like she knows something we don't. Meanwhile, Leonardo recovers his posture. A smirk slowly curls back onto his face, though now, it's a nervous imitation of his usual smugness. So, he says, raising his voice for the room to hear, you clean up well. A few forced laughs scatter in the air, but they die quickly. Sophia's expression doesn't change. Thank you, she replies, her voice low and smooth as velvet. You always said appearances matter. I finally listened. It's a subtle jab, but those who know Leonardo catch it. His left eyebrow twitches. I didn't expect you to show up, he says. Clearly, she replies. I imagine you thought I'd be too ashamed. Leonardo steps forward, closing the space between them, as if trying to reassert his dominance. And yet, here you are, playing dress-up. But don't get too comfortable. This world isn't for you. Sophia leans in just enough that only he can hear her next words. Neither is the empire you stole. Leonardo stiffens. He tries to laugh it off, but his throat has turned to stone. Before he can respond, she turns her back to him, slowly, deliberately, and addresses the stunned crowd. Thank you all for your warm welcome, she says. It's an honor to be among such distinguished company. The sarcasm is paper thin, but razor sharp. She raises her glass to the air. To new beginnings. Clink. The sound of her glass touching the edge of the crystal flute echoes like a declaration of war. Sophia took her place at the long table of honor, where every seat was reserved for names that meant something. Founders, heirs, investors, powerhouses. Men in tuxedos and women in couture dresses shifted uncomfortably as she sat down, legs crossed, posture impossibly straight. She didn't belong there, and yet, she belonged more than any of them. From the far corner of the room, behind a massive ice sculpture shaped like a falcon, the Del Valle family crest, two junior executives watched the scene unfold, wide-eyed. Is that really her? One asked, gulping down a flute of champagne. The cleaning girl, said the other. No, that woman. She walks like someone who owns half the city. And maybe she did. Leonardo hadn't moved. He watched her like a chess master who suddenly realized the opponent had been playing a different game all along. His plan had backfired, but how? He had expected embarrassment, desperation, maybe even tears. Not diamonds, not elegance, not that smile that told him she knew something. But what? His thoughts were broken by a voice beside him. Brother, Veronica hissed through clenched teeth. What the hell is going on? Leonardo finally moved, setting his glass down too forcefully. I don't know, he admitted. I thought she'd be broken. Well, she's not, Veronica snapped. She looks like she just came out of a royal carriage. And you invited her. If this ruins tonight's deal, it won't. He cut her off, but he didn't sound sure. Meanwhile, Sophia glanced around the room, catching small fragments of conversations. She looks familiar. Was she an actress? No. I've seen her before. Somewhere. She allowed herself a small smile. Let them wonder. Let them try to remember where they had seen her face, maybe scrubbing their office floor, maybe emptying their trash, maybe invisible in the hallway while they bragged about their bonuses and laughed about the help. But tonight, their memories betrayed them. Because tonight, she was unrecognizable. The dinner began. Courses arrived like clockwork, silver domed plates lifted with flair, gourmet dishes that tasted like nothing and cost a fortune. Sophia barely touched the food. She was too busy studying the guests. One man across the table, Mr. Ignacio Rivas, the firm's chief financial officer, kept glancing at her with narrowed eyes. His fingers trembled slightly as he sipped his wine. "You remind me of someone," he finally said. "Years ago, in Valencia. Were you ever there?" Sophia tilted her head slightly. "I've been many places." That answer, vague and polite, only deepened his unease. Leonardo, still standing, decided to reclaim control. He raised his glass and spoke loudly enough to quiet the music. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. This is not just a celebration of another successful year at Del Valle Enterprises. It's also a celebration of the values that built our legacy: loyalty, ambition, and knowing your place." The last words lingered like smoke. Eyes shifted toward Sophia, but she didn't even blink. Leonardo smirked again. "And in that spirit, I'd like to recognize one of our most surprising guests tonight. A woman who reminds us all that no matter where you come from, appearances can be deceiving." Polite laughter trickled in, but Sophia stood up slowly, raising her own glass. "And yet," she said, "some appearances reveal more than we'd like to admit." The room hushed. Leonardo's jaw tightened. Sophia continued, voice calm, words deliberate, "Like the appearance of integrity, when what lies beneath is rot, or the appearance of power when it's only borrowed." Whispers returned, louder this time. Veronica stood, furious. "Who is she?" she hissed again. And, just as she said it, a man entered the ballroom, tall, suited, carrying a briefcase, and whispered something into Ignacio Rivas' ear. The CFO paled. Then he looked up, straight at Sophia, and he recognized her. "Impossible," he muttered. "It can't be." But it was. Ignacio Rivas' hands clutched the stem of his wineglass, as though it were the only thing anchoring him to reality. He stared at Sophia, the blood draining from his face, the carefully curated confidence of a man who had spent decades playing with millions now replaced by one raw, primal emotion: fear. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Leonardo noticed the change. He turned toward Ignacio with a puzzled frown. "What is it?" But the CFO didn't answer. Instead, he slowly rose from his seat and walked toward Sophia, eyes locked on hers like a man approaching a ghost. The room watched in silence, forks mid-air, conversations frozen. "Señorita," Ignacio said carefully, his voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. I knew a girl. Many years ago. She had your eyes. Same fire. Same silence. But she was gone." Sophia offered gently. "Forgotten?" Ignacio nodded slowly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's the thing about people like me, Mr. Rivas. We vanish from your world when it's convenient for you. But some ghosts learn how to knock." The words sent a ripple of unease across the room. Leonardo stood straighter, clenching his fists. "What the hell is this?" Sophia tilted her head toward him. "A dinner, wasn't it? You invited me, remember?" Her voice was calm, too calm. Ignacio took a shaky step back. "It can't be. That girl, her mother was a maid in my estate in Valencia. She disappeared after she was fired for supposedly stealing a watch." Sophia interrupted. "A watch that later appeared in your son's room, if I recall correctly." Ignacio swallowed hard. "They're Maria's daughter." Gasps rippled. Sophia's face didn't change. Leonardo's eyes narrowed. "What the hell is this about?" "Ignacio, what is she talking about?" The CFO turned to him, panic rising. "Leonardo, this is a mistake. She shouldn't be here." "But I am," Sophia cut in. "Because the sins your empire was built on didn't disappear with the paperwork. Some of us kept the receipts." Veronica slammed her hand on the table, standing now. "Someone remove her." "No one will touch me," Sophia said, voice like thunder veiled in silk. "Unless they want this entire event live-streamed to every news outlet in Madrid." Everyone froze. And then, she pulled out her phone. With one tap, she opened a video. It was muted, but even without sound, the image was enough. It was Leonardo, in his office, screaming at someone off camera, throwing a folder, kicking over a chair. Then, the camera panned, and there she was, Sophia, dressed in her cleaning uniform. Silent. Still. Enduring. Where did you get this? Leonardo demanded, voice sharp as a blade. But she didn't answer. Instead, she slid the phone across the table. I've been collecting moments, she said softly, because one day, I knew I'd need them. Ignacio stepped back. Veronica sat down slowly, as if her legs had betrayed her. Leonardo clenched his jaw. What do you want? Money? A job? An apology? Sophia chuckled for the first time, a bitter, cutting sound. No, she whispered. I want something far more satisfying. Leonardo's lips parted to speak, but just then, a loud ding echoed from the ballroom speakers. Everyone turned to look at the massive screens mounted on either side of the stage. They flickered. Then a photo appeared. A familiar face. A man in his 60s, wearing a navy suit and a tie embroidered with the Del Valle family crest. The founder, Eduardo Del Valle, Leonardo's late father. And, standing beside him in the picture, was Maria, Sophia's mother, smiling, holding a baby. The caption at the bottom read, "To my daughter, born of silence and secrets. One day, this will all be yours." Leonardo staggered backward. His voice cracked. No. The silence that followed was so thick it felt alive. You could hear the pulse of tension echoing against the crystal walls. No one moved. No one blinked. Every single person in that ballroom had just witnessed the unthinkable. Sophia, the woman they had ignored, dismissed, humiliated, now stood as a question mark in the center of the empire. And with the image of Eduardo Del Valle and Maria illuminated behind her, the question was clear. Who is the real heir? Leonardo looked at the screen as if it were bleeding. That photo is fake, he barked, but his voice lacked its usual command. This is a stunt, some kind of revenge fantasy. Sophia turned toward him, slowly, like a lioness who had been waiting to strike not in rage, but in precision. Fake, she echoed. Then why is it signed? She tapped her phone again. On the screen, the image zoomed into the corner, revealing a handwritten note, scrawled in the familiar, slanted script of Eduardo Del Valle himself. Para Sofia, cuando seas mayor, recuerda que no veniste del polvo, veniste mi sangre. When you're older, remember, you didn't come from dust. You came from my blood. Leonardo stumbled back, his mouth half open. It's a lie, Veronica hissed. My father would never. But her voice broke before she could finish. Sophia walked to the center of the ballroom, the crowd parting like the sea. Her voice, when she spoke, wasn't loud, but it carried. Every word was a dagger. My mother worked for the Del Valle family for 7 years, she began. She served meals. She polished floors. She heard secrets. She was trusted, until she wasn't. People exchanged glances, as if remembering stories from the past that had never quite made sense. She was young, Sophia continued, beautiful, kind, and Eduardo Del Valle took an interest in her. Gasps, not publicly, not formally, but behind closed doors. And for a time, it wasn't pain. It was something else, something real, until she got pregnant. Leonardo's face had turned to stone. Enough, he said. No, Sophia said, looking straight at him. Not yet. She took a deep breath. Her hands didn't shake. When she told him, he said he'd take care of us, that we would be safe, that he would recognize me, but not until I was older. He said, this family will never accept you until you walk into it on your own terms. Veronica whispered to herself, barely audible, no, that can't be true. But then, Ignacio Rivas spoke. I remember, he said, voice hoarse. There were whispers. We were told to stay out of the East Wing. Your mother, she wore a necklace. A silver medallion Eduardo gave her. It had the initials SD. I asked what it meant once. She said someday. Destiny. Tears formed in the corners of Sophia's eyes. But she didn't cry. She turned the screen once more and tapped again. Now came a video, grainy, taken years ago. Eduardo speaking in front of a fireplace. His voice older, deeper. A private recording. If you're watching this, Sophia, it means I never got to meet you as I planned. But let no one tell you you weren't wanted. You're my daughter. And if the family tries to deny it, show them this. He held up a ring. The family crest engraved on its face. The symbol of ownership, legacy, power. Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out that same ring, held it in the air, and slipped it onto her finger. The room exploded in murmurs, gasps, disbelief. Leonardo was trembling. "You waited all this time," he said, his voice breaking between fury and fear. "Why didn't you come forward before?" Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Because you weren't done showing me who you were." She stepped closer to him now, only inches away. "You used me, humiliated me, called me worthless. And yet, we share the same blood. That should have meant something to you." Leonardo shook his head. "I won't let you take this company." Sophia leaned in. "I'm not here to take it," she whispered. "I'm here to reclaim it." And then she turned her back to him, walked away. The screens faded to black, but the war had only just begun. The ballroom was no longer a place of celebration. It had transformed into a battlefield, silent, shimmering, and deadly. Champagne glasses remained untouched. Conversations drowned under the weight of revelation. The ghost of Eduardo Del Valle had returned, not in spirit, but in blood, walking, breathing, and standing tall in the form of the daughter he tried to protect, and the empire that tried to erase her. Leonardo paced the corner of the room, his breath shallow, his eyes darting to his phone. Messages flooded in, from shareholders, journalists, distant cousins, all demanding clarity. Is she really his daughter? Was there a cover-up? If this is true, what happens to your position? And buried beneath those texts was another message, marked private. From Valerio, the family's top legal advisor. The will confirms it. He named her. She has legal standing. Do not confront her publicly. We need time. Leonardo stared at the message, his hands trembling. He felt as if the ground beneath his empire had cracked open. Across the ballroom, Sophia stood surrounded by people now too afraid to speak to her, or too stunned to know how. Her phone buzzed too, but she ignored it. Her eyes were fixed on the stage. She was calculating her next move, because this wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was about taking her place. Suddenly, a hand touched her arm. Gentle, familiar. It was Carmen, the elderly woman who worked beside her in the cleaning team for years. She looked up at Sophia with trembling eyes, lips quivering. "Is it true?" she asked in a whisper. Sophia looked at her, truly looked at her, and for a moment, the steel in her spine softened. "Yes, Carmen," she said. "I'm his daughter." Carmen took her hands and squeezed them. "Then it's about time this family paid for what they've done." A voice cut through the tension. Loud, sharp. Attention. It was Veronica, standing now at the top of the stairs that led to the private gallery above the ballroom. Her black dress shimmered like oil in water, her expression sharper than ever. She addressed the entire room, her voice steady despite the fire boiling underneath. "Let us not forget," she began, "that a photograph and a sentimental video do not prove legitimacy. Anyone can forge documents. Anyone can wear a ring. But this empire is not up for grabs by anyone who walks in with a dress and a story." She gestured to Sophia without saying her name. "If she is who she says she is, she'll face us in court. Until then, the Del Valle name will not be hijacked by scandal." The guests shifted, unsure whether to clap or run. Sophia raised her voice calmly, echoing across the marble. "Then you better prepare your lawyers, Veronica, because I've already filed a claim. The suit is public. The world will watch this family explain why Eduardo Del Valle's daughter was cleaning toilets while his son flew private jets." Shock hit the room like thunder. Veronica's mask cracked for the first time. "You planned this," she whispered. Sophia nodded. "For years." Leonardo tried to speak, but his voice had lost all bite. "You can't do this. There are rules. You can't just show up and claim." "I didn't show up," Sophia said, cutting him off. "You invited me." And she turned away again, signaling to the violinists to resume their music. They hesitated, but then, slowly, the strings came back to life. Soft, haunting, and as the music played, a single figure entered the ballroom through the front doors, unnoticed at first. But as the figure approached, the crowd began to murmur. He was old, dressed in a gray suit, eyes tired but sharp. Someone gasped, "Is that the notary?" Leonardo's eyes widened. It was Senor Abel Marquez, Eduardo Del Valle's personal attorney and the keeper of the original will. He walked slowly to the front, climbed the stage, and took the microphone. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight," he said, "but I heard what was happening, and I can no longer remain silent." He opened a leather folder, held it up. "This," he said, "is the original signed will of Eduardo del Valle, and in it, he names his daughter, Sofia Maria del Valle, as rightful heir to 40% of the company and to the summer estate in Mallorca." Gasps became roars. Leonardo staggered back. Veronica sat down, her face pale as ashes. And Sofia? She stood there quietly, her hands folded in front of her, her expression unreadable. But inside her chest, her mother's voice echoed gently. "Walk into it on your own terms." And she had. The room no longer belonged to the Del Valle dynasty. Not to Leonardo, not to Veronica, not to their polished speeches or their wine-soaked illusions of control. With Senor Abel Marquez standing on the stage holding the original will, and the name Sofia Maria del Valle echoing off the chandeliered ceilings, the legacy of the empire had just been rewritten, and the pen had been in Sofia's hands all along. Leonardo turned toward the stage like a cornered animal, his fists clenched, jaw locked, eyes burning with something darker than rage, desperation. "This is madness," he growled, voice cracking. "That document, it was destroyed. I had it." He stopped, but too late. Veronica spun toward him, her perfectly sculpted face contorted in a way no cosmetic surgeon could fix. "You had it," she hissed. "What the hell do you mean you had it?" Leonardo's eyes darted around like a man digging his own grave with every blink. Father gave me a copy," he said. He never intended to actually sign it. Senor Marquez cut in, his voice unwavering. "He did sign it. I was there. I witnessed it. The day before his final stroke. He called me to his villa in Mallorca. Said he wanted to die with a clean conscience." The lawyer turned toward the crowd. "And now, his conscience is here, alive, standing in front of you." Sofia felt every eye in the room burning into her, some filled with awe, others with shame, a few still with disbelief, but none dared speak. Leonardo stepped forward, trembling, voice rising with frantic denial. "No, no court will accept that. The board, the shareholders, they'll never." "They already have," Sofia said. And with that, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a second envelope. Abel took it from her and held it up. "This," he announced, "is a signed letter from 12 of the 15 board members of Del Valle Enterprises. Upon review of the original will, and due to the suppressed inheritance, they have agreed to freeze all voting powers of Leonardo Del Valle, pending legal resolution." The room erupted into chaos. Phones came out. People stood up. Half the crowd began murmuring in disbelief, the other half stepping away from Leonardo, as if he were contagious. And then, in a move no one expected, Leonardo lunged. He crossed the ballroom like a bolt of fury, heading straight for Sofia. His eyes wide, face red, spitting incoherent curses through clenched teeth. But before he reached her, someone grabbed him. It was Ignacio Rivas, the CFO, the man who had once turned his back on Sofia's mother, the man who now stared at Leonardo like he had just woken from a decades-long sleep. "You've done enough," Ignacio said, gripping Leonardo's arm tight. "Let go of me," Leonardo shouted, trying to break free. "She's destroying everything." Ignacio didn't let go. "No, you did that." And with a nod, he turned to two security guards standing at the edge of the ballroom. "Escort Mr. Del Valle outside," Ignacio ordered. Leonardo froze. "You wouldn't dare." "I just did." The guard approached, and as they took him by the arms, Leonardo thrashed, eyes locked on Sofia, veins bulging from his neck. "This isn't over," he screamed. "You'll regret this. You think I'll accept you?" "A maid." Sofia didn't flinch. She just stared at him with the same calm she had when he once threw cleaning supplies at her feet. But now, the power had shifted, and as he was dragged through the golden double doors, kicking, cursing, his voice faded like a stain being scrubbed from the floor. Veronica stood alone now, suddenly smaller at her designer heels. She tried to say something, a rebuttal, a defense, anything, but no one listened. Because the woman they once laughed at, ignored, stepped over, had just inherited the empire, and she hadn't begged for it. She had proven it. Sofia took the microphone from Senor Marquez. Her voice was quiet, but unshakable. "I didn't come here tonight to destroy anyone," she said. I came because I was tired of watching from the shadows while the people who buried my mother's truth drank champagne and toasted to their lies. She looked around the room, eyes steady. I came here to remind you that bloodlines are more than surnames. And sometimes, the ones who clean your messes are the only ones brave enough to expose them. A hush fell again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was respect. The ballroom emptied slowly, like a ship after the storm. Conversations turned into murmurs, murmurs into whispers, whispers into glances. No one wanted to admit it aloud, but everyone knew. The night the Del Valle name stood tallest was also the night it cracked. Sophia stood near the arched windows, looking out over the glittering skyline of Madrid. The city looked different now. Not smaller, not bigger, just honest. Like it was finally reflecting the truth she had carried in silence for too long. She felt a quiet presence beside her. Ignacio Rivas, the once powerful CFO, now looked 10 years older than he had 3 hours ago. His tie was loosened, and there was an apology in his eyes that no boardroom language could disguise. "Your mother was a good woman," he said softly. Sophia didn't turn. "I know. I should have spoken up," he continued, his voice low. "When Eduardo died, I knew something was wrong. The documents vanished. The East Wing was locked. And when Leonardo took the chairmanship, I thought I could hold it together. Keep the company stable. Keep your secret safe." Now she turned toward him. "You didn't keep it safe. You buried it. Like they buried her." Ignacio bowed his head. "I regret that every day." Sophia studied him for a moment. The guilt wasn't an act, but regret alone didn't clean wounds. "I don't need your guilt," she said. "I need your help." He looked up, surprised. She continued, "Leonardo isn't finished. You know that. He may be out of the building, but he's not out of the game. He still has allies. People he paid off. Secrets in his drawers." Ignacio nodded slowly. "What do you want me to do?" "Uncover everything," she said. "Open the books. The offshore accounts. The shell companies. If this company is going to have my name on it, I want it clean." He hesitated, not because he disagreed, but because he knew what that meant. "You realize," he said, "that once you start digging, you can't stop. You might destroy more than Leonardo." Sophia's eyes hardened. "Then let it all burn." Across the city, in a penthouse bathed in shadow, Leonardo Del Valle poured himself a glass of whiskey. His tie was gone, his shirt untucked. On the table before him, a laptop blinked with encrypted emails. Backup plans, transfers, contacts. He had always known this day could come. The day his father's secret would claw its way to the surface. But he had underestimated her. He thought humiliation would be enough to shatter her. He never expected calculated revenge. Public strategy. She wasn't a servant anymore. She was a Del Valle. "Damn you," he muttered, throwing the glass across the room. It shattered against the wall, amber liquid bleeding down marble like melted gold. A knock at the door. He froze. Another knock. Then the door creaked open. A man entered, tall, in a trench coat, face obscured in shadows. "I heard you had a problem," the man said, voice smooth and cold. Leonardo narrowed his eyes. "I don't pay for questions, only solutions." The man smiled, setting down a small black briefcase. "Then let's talk about your sister." Leonardo blinked. "Veronica?" "No," the man said. "The new one." Back at the Del Valle Tower, Sophia sat alone in Eduardo's old office, the one that had been locked for years after his death, then claimed by Leonardo like a spoiled child seizing a throne. She looked around at the walnut bookshelves, the gold-framed paintings, the decanter still half full of 20-year-old brandy. There was dust in the corners, neglect hiding behind luxury. She stepped toward the massive desk and opened the top drawer. Inside, she found a photograph. Her mother, younger, laughing, holding baby Sophia in her arms. Behind them, Eduardo, not posing, just watching, smiling. Tears threatened to fall, but Sophia held them back. There was no time for grief now, only justice. Suddenly, her phone lit up. An anonymous number. One word. The word blinked on her phone like a warning from another realm. "Run." Sophia stared at the message, her heart hammering against her ribs. The silence in the office, once peaceful and nostalgic, now felt suffocating. She looked around, the walls, the corners, the windows, as if the word itself had stirred the shadows awake. But she didn't run. She stood. She listened. Nothing. No footsteps. No creaks. Yet the air had changed. The once safe sanctuary of Eduardo's office now breathed danger. It was no longer just a place of memories. It had become a hunting ground. She picked up the phone and typed a quick message to Abel Marquez. "Was that you?" No reply. Then she opened the drawer beneath the one with the photo. Inside, a small pistol. Sleek. Silver. Engraved with the initials EDEV, her father's. An heirloom, hidden in plain sight. She had never held a weapon before, but something about it felt inevitable. Just then, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Gone. Darkness swallowed the room whole. And then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. In the hallway. Her pulse spiked. She slipped behind a large curtain near the window, just like she used to as a child playing hide and seek with Carmen in the servant quarters. Except now, there were no games. No laughter. Only silence and breath. The door creaked open. She held her breath. A figure entered. Tall. Heavy boots. A flashlight sweeping slowly across the room. Not a security guard. Too silent. Too calm. Too prepared. He moved toward the desk, shining the light over its surface. The open drawer. The missing gun. Sophia held the pistol close to her chest, her hands trembling now. What do I do? What do I do? Echoed in her mind. She had never faced this part of the war. She had fought with words, with facts, with revelation, not with bullets. Then a phone rang. Not hers. The man's. He froze. Answered. "She's not here," he whispered. Pause. "No, the gun's gone." I think she knew. Pause. Leonardo's voice filtered through the speaker, just audible. "Then find her. She can't leave that building tonight." Sophia's chest clenched. She had to move. She waited until the man turned, flashlight pointing away, then slipped from behind the curtain and bolted through the side door that connected the office to the private corridor, one that only Eduardo and a few others ever used. It led to the archives, the basement, the emergency stairwell. Her heels clacked once, too loud. The man turned. "Hey!" She ran. Down the dark hallway, her lungs burning, heart pounding. She reached the stairwell and descended 2 flights, nearly tripping. The walls were lined with paintings of stern Del Valle ancestors. Now nothing but blurred ghosts in the dark. Finally, she reached the records room. Old files, blueprints, schematics, forgotten keys of the empire. She locked the door behind her and turned on the emergency light, a faint orange bulb that buzzed weakly above. She was safe for now, but the question clawed at her gut. Why now? Why tonight? She scanned the room. Folders, boxes, cabinets, and then something strange. A small drawer labeled INVDVX. Inside, a stack of sealed envelopes marked confidential. She opened the first. Inside, photos. Veronica, years ago, standing beside a man who was not her husband, signing something. Then another. Leonardo, handing off a large black duffel to a man in military uniform. Another. A copy of a Swiss bank account, linked to funds traced back to the orphanage Sophia had once lived in after her mother died. Her hands shook. Oh my God, it wasn't just corruption. It was a conspiracy. A web. She whispered aloud to no one. My mother didn't die of illness. The pieces clicked. Her exile, the missing will, the erased inheritance, her mother's death. She staggered back, clutching the folder, gasping. This wasn't about business. This was a cover-up. And the person at the center of it all, Veronica. Just then, a loud bang on the door. She spun around. Another. And another. The voice on the other side. Veronica's. Cold. Controlled. I gave you a chance, Sophia. I even let you have your moment. But this changes everything. Pause. You found what you weren't supposed to. And then the lights cut out completely. Total darkness. The kind that suffocates you. That makes the air thick and every sound louder. The pounding on the archive door had stopped, but Veronica's words still echoed in Sophia's ears like a curse. You found what you weren't supposed to. Her fingers tightened around the folder of documents as her back pressed to the cool metal cabinet. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. The absence of footsteps. The lack of threats. It meant they were planning something. She needed to move. Fast. She reached into the shadows, feeling along the back wall of the archive room. Eduardo had once told her, in one of his whispered visits during childhood. Every real empire has escape routes, even from itself. That had to mean something. Her hand landed on a panel. Loose, wooden, dusty. She pushed. Click. A small passage behind the shelving creaked open. Narrow, barely enough for a person, but just wide enough for escape. She slid in, pulling the panel closed behind her, heart racing in her throat. The crawl space was tight, but it sloped downward. Old pipes dripped moisture. Cobwebs clung to her hair. It smelled like mold and secrets. After 5 minutes of crawling, she reached the end, a rusted metal hatch. Pushing it open revealed a staircase, spiral, steep, and leading to a forgotten corridor beneath the building. At the base of the stairwell, a faded brass plate hung crooked on the wall. Sector B, Room 17. That number sent a chill down her spine. Room 17. When she was 16, a whisper passed between maids like an old urban legend. Don't ever open Room 17. That's where they hide their sins. It had been locked for as long as anyone remembered. But the closer she got, the more she realized this wasn't a myth. This was her destination. She reached the door. Old, sealed with 2 deadbolts. She used a pin from her hair, her mother's pin. A trick Carmen had taught her back in the day, just in case the pantry ever got locked again. 1 bolt. 2. The door creaked open, and inside Tom had stood still. Stacks of label boxes, dusty tapes, drawers of photographs. Evidence from decades of silence. She stepped inside, flicked the breaker, and fluorescent lights flickered to life one by one. Each shelf was marked with names. V. Del Valle, 1997 to 2005. L. Del Valle, Black Contracts. Orfanato El Silencio, Financiamiento Oculto, Proyecto Nemesis, Testimonios. And finally, Maria/SDV. Her chest tightened. She reached for the last box. Inside, a collection of diaries. Her mother's handwriting. Pages soaked with emotion, terror, and warnings. They told me to sign. I refused. That's when I knew they would never let Sophia be part of their family. Not while Veronica breathes. She's the one who called the clinic. She's the one who sent the pills. Sophia's hands trembled. If anything happens to me, Sophia must find Room 17. Eduardo promised it would be there. Tears burned in her eyes. She had been right all along. Her mother hadn't died of illness. She had been silenced, and Veronica had orchestrated it. She turned toward the metal shelf where a single VHS tape sat. Label, Confession, Eduardo Del Valle/Ultimos Dias. She found a working monitor. Inserted the tape. The screen flickered. Static. Then, her father, frail, sitting in a chair, his voice hoarse. If you're watching this, it means I failed to do what I should have done in life. Sophia, I never meant for them to hurt you, but I was a coward. And Veronica, she always wanted the empire for herself, even if it meant erasing you. He coughed violently. The funds, the clinic, the false death certificate. I found it all too late. I should have stopped her. A pause. If you're strong enough to be here now, take it all. Burn it if you must. But never let her win. The screen went black. And then, a voice behind her. You shouldn't have watched that. She spun. Veronica stood in the doorway, holding a gun. Her expression wasn't anger. It was fear masked as power. You always were curious, she said, stepping into the room, gun aimed steady. Too curious. Like your mother. Sophia's eyes didn't leave her. You poisoned her. I corrected a mistake, Veronica said coldly. Eduardo fell in love with a servant and nearly handed over everything we built. I saved the family. I protected our name. Sophia shook her head slowly. You protected your seat at the table, not the name. Veronica's finger tensed over the trigger. Give me the tapes, she demanded. And no one ever hears about Room 17. But Sophia didn't move, because behind Veronica, a figure emerged from the shadows. Carmen, holding her phone, streaming everything, live, to the internet. Veronica's face turned pale as marble. No, too late. The truth was already out. Veronica's arm trembled as she aimed the gun, but the power was already gone. Her armor, lies, silence, intimidation, had cracked the moment Carmen stepped into the light, holding her phone like a sword. The live stream was glowing bright on the screen, the title plain and devastating. Del Valle heirs confronts aunt who orchestrated her mother's death. Watch live. Over 42,000 viewers were watching, climbing by the second. The comments flooded in. She admitted it. Did you hear that? Justice for Maria. Veronica is done. Sophia didn't blink. Her voice, though trembling, cut through the tension like a scalpel. You wanted silence, Veronica. You used fear, money, and shame. But you forgot one thing. She stepped closer, chest rising and falling with adrenaline. You forgot what happens when people stop being afraid of you. Veronica's finger hovered over the trigger. But Carmen, brave and shaking, stepped closer too. Everyone's watching, Senora. Even your husband, your children, your board members, the police. Veronica's eyes darted toward the phone. The flashing heart emojis, the shock face reactions, the endless row of comments. It was no longer just a confrontation. It was a trial, in front of the world. She lowered the gun, just slightly, and then she spoke. They never understood, she said, her voice slipping into something more fragile. I wasn't trying to kill your mother. I just wanted to protect everything you built. I love this company. I love my father. Her voice broke, and he loved her. Sophia's throat tightened. For a brief moment, something in her almost softened. But then she remembered every night her mother cried in secret. Every shift, she worked with bleeding fingers. Every insult hurled at her daughter as if she were dirt. And every year, the truth stayed buried under marble floors. She shook her head. You don't get to cry, she said quietly. Not tonight. From outside the basement, sirens echoed. Approaching, getting closer. Carmen whispered, they're coming. Veronica dropped the gun with a soft clink. It hit the floor like a verdict. Sophia turned toward the table, gathered every file, every document, and tucked them into a large metal case labeled Evidence Box #S17. She looked at Carmen. Thank you, she said. But Carmen smiled. No, thank you for not letting them erase her. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Flashlights, voices, Madrid police, hands where we can see them. Veronica didn't resist. As the officers entered the room, they saw it all. The gun, the files, the live stream still going, and a woman who had already confessed in front of thousands. She was arrested on the spot. Sophia stood silently as they read her rights. No smile, no victory dance, just a deep, long exhale, as if for the first time in her life, she could finally breathe without fear. But the story wasn't over. Back upstairs, chaos reigned. TV crews gathered outside the tower. News tickers rolled on live broadcasts. Every headline across Spain screamed the same story. Daughter of Del Valle reclaims her legacy, exposes family crimes live. Veronica Del Valle arrested. Murder conspiracy, fraud, cover-up. From Maid to heiress. The true story of Sofia Maria Del Valle. Inside the boardroom, emergency meetings were held. Shares plummeted. Investors demanded accountability. And then came the final blow, an emergency letter from the Del Valle Board of Directors. It was simple. Effective immediately, all executive powers of the Del Valle family are suspended pending investigation. The acting leadership will be transferred to the legal heir and majority shareholder, Ms. Sofia Maria Del Valle. Sofia received the letter that evening, printed and signed by every surviving board member. Her hands shook as she read it. It was official. She was no longer just part of the legacy. She was the legacy. Still, she didn't celebrate. She stood by the window of Eduardo's office, now hers, and looked out over the dark skyline of Madrid. Her mother's voice whispered in her memory again. You'll be more than they ever dreamed of, Sofia. Not because you have their name, but because you survived it. She closed her eyes, let the silence wash over her, until another buzz lit up her phone. This time, an email. Subject line, urgent. Inheritance clause 23.4. You're not the only one. Attached, a birth certificate. Different city, different name, same father. Her blood ran cold. Sophia stared at the screen, her mind racing. The email had come from an anonymous address. No signature, no sender. Just a message, sharp as a knife, and just as personal. You're not the only one, Sophia. Eduardo left more than one secret behind. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tapped the attachment open. Birth certificate, issued in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Name of child, Nicholas Alejandro Duarte. Date of birth, March 21st, 1991. Father, Eduardo Del Valle. It was real. Stamped. Sealed. Unmistakable. Sophia's breath caught. Another child. Another heir. Another lie. Her entire world. The climb, the battle, the courtroom victories, the media storm, had all been built around the idea that she was the forgotten one, the hidden daughter, the last truth. And now, she wasn't alone. Her first instinct was denial. A forged document, a desperate power play. But no, she had seen enough official files to know the difference. The paper grain, the seal, the registration code. This was real. But why now? Who sent it? Why reveal it now that she had won? She clicked on the body of the message again. There was more. He knows who you are, and he's coming for what's his. Attached below was a photo. Grainy. A man in his early 30s, tall, broad shoulders, dark hair slicked back, standing in front of a private jet. The image was time-stamped 2 days ago. His eyes, even blurred, radiated confidence, or maybe arrogance. Sophia studied him. He looked familiar. Not his face, no, but the posture, the aura, the unmistakable Del Valle magnetism. And that terrified her more than anything. There was a knock at her door. She jolted, slamming the laptop shut. It was Ignacio. He stepped in, holding a file. The media is still outside. They want a statement. Sophia nodded slowly, distracted. Ignacio, she said, her voice low. Did you ever hear the name Nicholas Duarte? He froze. His eyes didn't move. His face didn't flinch, but his silence was louder than any scream. You knew, she whispered. He sat down. Yes, he admitted. Her heart sank. Why didn't you tell me? Because Eduardo made me promise, Ignacio said. Nicholas was born during one of Eduardo's long business trips. Argentina, a woman from a diplomatic family. They had an affair. She refused to live in his shadow, took the child, raised him far from the empire. But Eduardo, he sent money, letters, visits in secret. And Nicholas? Sophia asked, does he know? Ignacio hesitated. Not everything, but enough. She leaned back in her chair. So, I'm not the only one he abandoned. Ignacio looked at her, pained. He didn't abandon you, Sophia. He protected you. From Veronica. From Leonardo. From what this family had become. She looked out the window. But he didn't protect Nicholas. A long silence fell. Ignacio placed a folder on her desk. Tomorrow, you have a press conference. You'll face shareholders, stakeholders, the world. And now this. She nodded. He stood to leave. But at the door, he paused. There's something else, he said. The letter in the will, it mentioned Nicholas. Eduardo said that if the truth ever came out, the two of you had to meet. Not in court, not on camera, but face to face. In his vineyard. In Segovia. Sophia raised an eyebrow. He had a vineyard. Ignacio smiled sadly. Of course. Every powerful man hides something in a vineyard. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay on the couch of her new office, the city glowing beneath her, the storm of headlines flashing on her phone like warning lights. But her mind was elsewhere. What kind of man was Nicholas? Would he want peace? Power? Revenge? She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was standing at the gates of the Del Valle vineyard. Morning light painted the hills gold. The silence here wasn't threatening like the towers. It was full of memory. She stepped through the iron gate, her heels crunching against gravel. And then she saw him, Nicholas, leaning against a fence post, arms crossed, watching her approach. They didn't speak for a long moment. Then he smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just amused. You're late, he said. Sister. The breeze rolled over the hills of Segovia, carrying the scent of crushed grapes and dusted earth. The vineyard shimmered beneath the sun, rows of vines twisting in perfect formation like the legacy of the man who planted them. Complicated, elegant, full of rot beneath the surface. Sophia stood just beyond the stone archway, facing Nicholas for the first time. They were strangers, yet somehow not. Nicholas's features were harder in person. Sharp jawline, sun-touched skin, a military stance that suggested discipline or perhaps survival. But the resemblance was unmistakable. The eyes, the eyebrows, the calm beneath the storm. Eduardo lived in both of them. You're real, he said after a pause, voice steady. So are you, she replied. I wasn't sure, he admitted. I got your name 5 years ago. Just a name. Sophia. That was it. She raised an eyebrow. And you didn't come looking? He shrugged. What would I have said? I think we shared DNA and a dead father who lied to everyone. That never plays well. Sophia looked around the vineyard. Everything about it was poetic, serene, and absolutely deceptive. So why now? She asked. Nicholas took a deep breath, then tossed her something. She caught it instinctively. A ring, the Del Valle crest. But this one had a different inscription on the inside. Para Anad, si alguna vez encuentras a tu hermana, protegila. She read it slowly, then looked up. You had this the whole time. I got it when he died, Nicholas said, with a letter. He said if I ever wanted to know the whole truth, I'd have to find you, that you'd understand. She held the ring tighter. I don't understand anything, she said, honestly. I've been lied to for so long, I don't even know what truth smells like anymore. He gave a crooked smile. It smells like fermented grapes and old regrets. Sophia allowed herself a short laugh, the first in what felt like years. So, she said, what now? He walked toward the vine wall, ran his fingers along a grape cluster. You inherited the company. You have a name. The press loves you. The board fears you. And now you find out there's another Del Valle with just as much blood right as you. Sophia tensed. Is that what this is about? Inheritance? He looked back at her. I don't care about your buildings or your tower. I don't want the empire. Then why are you here? He held her gaze. Because I want to make sure it doesn't eat you alive. She blinked. He continued, more serious now. I watched our father build that world from the shadows. I watched him lie, manipulate, betray. I didn't want anything to do with it. But when I saw you, when I saw what they did to you, how you fought back, I knew he was wrong about one thing. What's that? She whispered. That the Del Valle legacy would die with him. It won't. It'll live in you, if you don't let it turn you into them. Sophia sat down on the vineyard bench. Her legs finally gave in. She looked at him again, her brother, by blood, and now by something stronger, survival. I want to rewrite it, she said. All of it. The company, the foundation, the way people are treated. I don't want another girl mopping floors while the world tells her she's invisible. He nodded. I'll help you. She looked up, surprised. You will. Someone's got to remind you who you are when they try to drown you in power. They sat in silence for a moment. The wind played between the vines. In the distance, a small bird flitted from one wire to another. The sun warmed their faces. And just like that, something ancient began to heal. Later that evening, Sophia returned to the city. A press conference awaited. Cameras. Questions. Headlines. She stood before the microphones, lights glaring, and she spoke. I was born invisible, raised in silence, erased by those who fear my name. But I'm here now, not just to take back what was mine, but to create something no one ever gave me. Dignity, justice, and truth. To those who feel unseen, I see you. To those who are told to stay silent, I'm speaking for you. And to those who still think power is measured by who you crush beneath your shoes, I suggest you take them off. You'll walk farther in the dirt than in glass towers. Flashbulbs exploded. Applause erupted. And at the back of the room, Nicholas watched her from the shadows, proud, calm, and ready. The Del Valle dynasty had finally changed hands. Not with war, but with awakening. Because in the end, the blood didn't define the air. The courage did. Y así terminó una historia que no solo expuso mentiras, sino que iluminó la verdad. Una joven nacida en la sombra, humillada por los poderosos, ese levantó con la fuerza de quien fue criada, en el silencio, pero guiada por algo mayor. Porque cuando todo parecía perdido, fue Dios quien lo recordó, que os humildes heredaron la tierra. Y tú que estás viendo esto, tal vez también te han dicho que no vales nada. Tal vez te han hecho creer que tu historia no importa. Pero escúchame bien. Dios no comete errors. Y si te mantienes firme, con fe, humildad y corazón limpio, el mundo tendrá que escuchar tu verdad. Si esta historia te tocó el corazón, suscribite al canal para no perder más relatos que transforman vidas. Y antes de ir, escribe en los comentarios desde que peso ciudad nos estás viendo. Queremos saber, hasta donde llegan estas historias que marcan. Nos vimos en el próximo video. Y recuerda, Dios nunca liga tarde. Él liga justo cuando el alma está lista.